We are now entering the garden, so let's have a look at what is growing on. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. It is Raw Vegan Dude, and today I have a full garden tour for you guys, so let's get into that. This is one of the entrances to the garden, and in this area you can see there's a lot of bare ground. It was actually a swimming pool which we had for over 15 years, but now it has been dug up and it is being filled out, and I'm using it as space for all my seedlings, my various fruit tree seedlings. I've got dragon fruit cuttings, prickly pear cuttings. Here we have granadilla passion fruit. Here some avocados, mangoes, citrus. There is a bunch of jackfruit. There is a lot of jackfruit seedlings. These are all for grafting. Tamarillo, some indigenous South African fruit tree seedlings as well. Mixed in here is also a bunch of ornamentals, bromeliads, orchids, lilies, snake plants, and so on. Inside my mini greenhouse, I use it to start up my seedlings. I'll show you some of them. Thyme, basil, got some tomatoes in here, and this is some rocket and basil seedlings. And I've also been using it as a place to keep my grafted fruit trees. For example, here is a marula fruit tree that I grafted recently, and it has been successful. Over here are some avocado seedlings which also look to be popping the grafting tape. Here are some persimmon seedlings, as well as some loquat seedlings, which I will all be using to graft in the future. Over here we have two water tanks that act as a reservoir, and that has been most useful over the past few months. And this is the beginning of the garden. The first fruit tree I introduce you to is the Heidi mango. As you can see here, the fruit is actually quite large. The Heidi mango is usually a late season mango, so I'm curious to see how much more size this small tree will actually put on. I put it in the ground probably around 5 or 6 months ago, so it's not been in the ground that long, but it has flowered quite well, and it is also held on to a single fruit. So let's see. I'm crossing my fingers and hoping it does hold on and it does mature. Moving on from the Heidi mango, here is a persimmon tree which I actually put in the ground around a month and a half ago, and it flowered and it is holding on to a fruit. I'm not sure if this fruit is going to make it, because as you can see the branch is quite wimpy, but yeah, hopefully it does veg out quite a bit, and it will hold, hopefully it will hold some good fruit in the year to come. This is either the Isu or I think it is Triumph persimmon. Those were the two that I had bought, so I'm not too sure. The label fell off, but I'm sure I'll be able to tell when the fruit gets here. Over here I have a bunch of papayas. So I actually have done a papaya specific video. That is my last video where I go into a lot of detail about each papaya growing in the garden. So if you want to check that out, we'll put a link to that in the description. In this area it is quite a steep embankment, so I decided to throw a bunch of papaya seeds and just to see what happens, and it's actually doing really well. We've got a lot of female papayas which have come up, and there are more coming up. and I continue to plant more seeds, well, throw seeds, and yeah, that's been working quite well for me. Here is another papaya. So I've just walked back from the persimmon and the Heidi mangoes behind me, and I'm going to show you guys what is down this row. Here is a wider angle. So the first tree you can see here is an avocado tree. It's not a known variety, it's actually a variety, a seedling variety, which I have indeed grafted. It hasn't flowered as yet, but it produces really good fruit. I've tasted the fruit of the mother tree, and I'm looking forward to having it in the years to come. It's putting on some really nice vegetative growth at the moment. So let's continue walking. Here are some pineapples. These are cayenne pineapples, the really big ones. They are indeed delicious. I planted this as a top at the beginning of the year, and it has put on quite a lot of size. So I know it can take up to 2 years for pineapples to grow from the tops. If we look on the other side of the pineapple, we have a cherry guava tree, which is absolutely loaded at the moment, and it is putting on some really nice new growth. Behind that, I've got more papayas, and as you guys can see, I've heavily mulched this area to lock in that moisture and keep the organic matter in the garden to feed the microorganisms in the soil. Healthy soil equals healthy plants. These are extremely tasty guavas. I'm looking forward to having them. As we move on this row, here is another avocado tree. This is the Pinkerton tree. A wider look at that. This Pinkerton avocado has been in the ground for around 3 years now, and it is actually holding on to some fruit. Here are 2 Pinkerton avocados, and they're actually getting some good size on them as well. As I move on from the Pinkerton tree, this is another grafted avocado tree. It is of a unknown seedling variety, which is growing at my uncle's place, and it puts on a lot of flowers and fruit, and it is also the same, around the same age as the Pinkerton, about 3 years old, and yeah, it's doing really well. I've got in a ton of mulch, sugarcane mulch, and the avocado trees absolutely love it. As I move on from the avocados, in this area I am storing all my ornamental plants, which include succulents, bromeliads, aloes, and so on. Just give you guys a good look at them. Yeah, these are the arrangements which I have put them in at the moment, and yeah, all of these will be used as mother plants to propagate. Here is a hanging basket. It looks very nice aesthetically, and here we have a Alfonso mango tree, and it actually has quite a few mangoes on it. I also planted this tree probably at the start of the year, and it was probably already a couple of years old. As you can see, the trunk is quite thick and sturdy, and I'm hoping it holds on to a few Alfonso mangoes. I've never tasted an Alfonso mango before, so that's quite exciting. Let's move on from the Alfonso mango tree to these bar tubs. these were all bar tubs that were sitting around and doing absolutely nothing. So I decided to fill them with water and to get some. These are yellow lotus flowers, lilies, and there was a flower yesterday. In here I've got some tropical fish, probably see one. These are platies in here, and the water is quite murky because I just installed the pump today and it shook around all the gunk and all the muck that are in the roots of the lilies, and that's why it looks a bit dark in here. But yeah, there are fish in here as well as tree frog tadpoles. I saw one just a bit earlier on, and I'll just add that clip in to show you guys what they look like. The platies in here have already had little babies, and I've seen them swimming along the surface. And in this tub over here we have Malawian cichlids. So they will actually come up to my fingers because they are actually quite used to people. And yeah, if you just wait a bit, they might actually start nibbling at my fingers. And they are absolutely beautiful colors. So many different colors in here. And yeah, so as we move on, in these pots I have different hibiscus, and this one doesn't look too good because it has been recently transplanted. It should come back just fine. And look at this, guys, this is absolutely beautiful. Look how big that hibiscus flower is. In these bins I use them to compost and to store dried leaves, which I use in the compost making process. And yeah, next to the bins I have some dragon fruit growing up a bougainvillea. This is the American Beauty dragon fruit, and I've also got the true Thai purple dragon fruit growing out there in the same pot. And then here is my compost heap. So I've got a lot of seedlings growing out of the compost heap, which need to actually come in here and pot them up. Let's follow the path. So here I've got a star ruby grapefruit which I just planted in the ground last week. In this area I've already showed you guys where the papayas are, but here is an Eldon mango. It's one of the original commercially grown mangoes, and that has put a lot of new growth in the last, and it's looking really nice and lush. So let's move on. Over here is a Eureka lemon, which has been in the ground for about 2 years or so, and it is beginning to do very well. We've got a lot of fruitlets on it, but there has been some ant damage and spring up aphids, which then suck the juices out of the leaves, leaving them looking like that. Here is another persimmon. Like I said before, this is either Isu or a Triumph persimmon, and it has also put in some really nice new growth. Over here is the oldest papaya in the yard. It is around 3 years old, and it's also gotten really tall. There are tons of papayas on here, as you can see, just in reaching distance. Over here I have a bear's lime, and it is also putting up a lot of new growth. It's looking really good. So I've decided to put a row of citrus in here because I could plant them really close together. This is a mandarin. In South Africa we call them nachis, and it is doing quite well. This went in the ground around 2 weeks ago as well. And here is a kumquat tree. It's put on a little bit of new growth, and yeah, hopefully it comes back really strong. It was in a pot for a long time, so I'm sure those roots will start going into the ground and it will be a much happier tree. So let us move on. This is just a quick view of the actual garden with my wide camera on. Okay, I've changed it back to the normal camera, and let's start from the top. In here under extra protection is my grafted jackfruit tree. Jackfruit is one of my favorite fruits. You can see the graft was done right there by me, and yeah, it has put on these 3 new leaves, and hopefully in a few years I'll be able to harvest some jackfruit from this tree. So let's move on. So I've got a lot of mulch on the ground. This is mostly sugarcane mulch. As you can see, the sugarcane is growing back. I have just been chopping and dropping all the sugarcane. And here I've got a tamarillo, a tree tomato, which I transplanted, and it seems to be doing just fine. It actually has a really shallow root system, so I was able to dig up the entire tree, and it's put on a lot of flowers, and yeah, hopefully a lot of fruit. And behind it, you could see on the fence is a granadilla vine, and the flowers are just beginning to start. They smell absolutely divine. I've got both the yellow and the purple passion fruit growing, as well as grapes. There is quite a lot of grapes. The grape has been a second year in the ground, and it has absolutely exploded. You can see some grapes here, but I'll show you more of the grapevine in a bit. I've got more dragon fruit growing up this curry leaf tree, as well as dragon fruit growing on the wall. That is a Haley's Comet dragon fruit. Produces a magenta colored fruit, and it's also a large fruit. Here is my Valencia orange tree. It's been in the ground for about 3 years now, and it's actually quite tall. It's about the same height as me, and it's also got some little fruit on it. And next to it I've got the Cara orange, and it's also doing quite well. It's put on a lot of new growth, and it is holding on to a few fruit. So let us follow the path. As you can see here, I've just built up the bank using stones, and I've planted some monstera plants which I want to grow up these rocks. And yeah, this is actually a variegated monstera plant, so it has white in the leaves. You can't actually see it in any of these, but it is indeed a variegated monstera. And here, one of the 3 types of bananas I have growing in the yard, and this is the red Dhaka banana, which I planted at the start of the year. It has put on this new pop here, has grown out, as well as this here, and I'm hoping soon that it will put out its first fruit. So I haven't eaten a red banana before, but I'm really keen on this producing for me. And if we look across, we've got more papayas. This is a lychee tree, a Mauritius lychee. It's been in the ground for about 3 years. It is a super slow grower. It does not like wind at all, so when it's really small, you have to protect them from the wind. And it's doing quite well. It's got a whole lot of new shoots that are coming out. And yeah, hopefully in a few more years, we'll be able to harvest some lychees. So let me actually walk down here. These are some Cavendish bananas, which I planted in around 3 years ago. More passion fruit and grapes. You can see some of the grapes here. And yeah, it's doing quite well. Let's go back on the path. This is my grafted loquat tree. It's not of a known variety, it's of a seedling variety, which I grafted at the start of the year, and I already harvested some fruit. Those are the seedlings I showed you at the start of the video, were actually from this tree. So let's continue. Over here I have a red custard apple seedling. It does have some flowers on it, and it has some new leaves, but I doubt it will hold any. It's also been in the ground for quite a while, about 3 years, and it is still quite small. I'm sure it has been shaded out a bit by the bananas, which I think I will eventually take out. This is where the grapevine begins. So as I can show you here, it is quite thick. It's been in the ground for around 2 years, and it did produce fruit in its first year, but this year it has become an overachiever because there are grapes everywhere. I'm not too sure about the variety of the grape. It is a black grape, but I did get it from a trusted source, which told me it produces really well, and yeah, it does well in the local area. So as you can see, just tons of grapes. Amongst the grapes, there's a papaya, which I did not plant intentionally. It grew out of the compost. These are more Cavendish bananas. Here we have this is a Tommy Atkins mango tree. It's also of the trees that have been in the ground for the longest amount of time, which is around 3 years. It is much taller than me now, and it's got a nice fat trunk. You can still see where it's grafted at. So if I look across, here is a early red apple which I planted also maybe about 2 months ago, and it has woken up from its dormancy. It actually it's actually put on some flowers which have now fell off. But yeah, I'm hoping that it does really well. If we move on, here is another persimmon tree. This is the Isu persimmon. It has been in the ground for 2 years now. It was just a little stick, and now it's put on some really nice growth. It's grown accustomed to the wind, because on the coast where I am, it does get pretty windy, and it was affecting it a bit with blowing off some of the leaves, but so far so good. It looks really nice. It looks quite healthy. And if we look across, here are some ladyfinger bananas, and I've been harvesting so many ladyfinger bananas. There are some racks up there. There's about 4 of them, I think. And I actually got all of these plants for free from the side of the road. I dug these up, and yeah, a year later, it's absolutely madness. I probably dug up about 3 or 4 plants, and I got these back in return. The bananas, I have a young Heidi mango, and I'm curious to see how it does. It's first year in the ground. It has actually flowered below the graft. Here's the graft, and it's flowered and it's holding on to some fruit below the graft. So that is quite peculiar. I have seen it before in mango trees, but still, for quite a small tree to flower on its own is always special. If we move in to the bananas, there is some mint growing out of the mulch, and this is my monstera plant. It is growing absolutely magnificently. I planted it in maybe at the start of the year. It just had 1 leaf on it, and it's doing super well. I really wanted to creep all over this bank and take over. It's looking really healthy. Here is a better look at some of the bananas. Some nice fat racks up there, and in the middle here, just some normal Cavendish bananas, more ladyfinger bananas. So that's about everything I have growing in the garden at the moment. I really hope you guys enjoy the video. If you do enjoy watching my videos, please hit a like, please subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.